Everybody, welcome back. Today's episode is going to be a fiery one because I am sick to death of seeing people on Instagram that are one, not actually embodied in their feminine energy, and two, selling this story or this narrative that all you have to do is XYZ and then you are in your feminine. If you think, oh, all I have to do is essentially like tick off these things in a checklist on a checklist and then I'm in my feminine for the day, I'm telling you right now, you have got it all wrong. So I'm going to break down. I've been doing this for 8 years, a long time. So I'm going to break down today actually what true feminine embodiment is. Because once you are truly embodied in your feminine, it becomes so much easier to not only have him leading you and let him lead you, but it also becomes so much easier to magnetize everything in your life that you want into you. Feminine energy is magnetic. Right? We are the receivers. Literally, even in conception, with conception, the egg is quite literally receiving the sperm. So, a lot of women that come to me that are having fertility struggles and conception struggles, and they've been trying quote unquote everything. I say quote unquote everything because they haven't actually tried the energetic stuff and the trauma healing stuff. It's so clear to me that actually their body does not want to receive this for various different reasons. And if the sperm is trying to give, well, if the egg isn't going to receive, it's not going to actually happen, right? You aren't then going to be able to conceive a baby. There is so much magic in conception that we just don't understand. And I feel like these days we're trying to bring it all down to this like dotting the I's, crossing the T's science aspect, but it's still resulting, just as an example, in so many high achieving, high functioning women that are struggling to fall pregnant. Yes, we also need to look at the endocrine disruptors and environmental toxins, and his sperm health is very, very important in all of this, but the energetic stuff cannot be denied. So let's dive into what true feminine embodiment is. And when I say that I've been doing this for 8 years, I don't just mean like, oh, I've been reading books about it for 8 years. I mean, I have been getting paid and getting results for people for 8 years. I started reading about this before the 8 years. When I say I've been doing this for 8 years, I mean I've been doing this job and making a living out of it for the last 8 years, which is actually kind of crazy to think about. So let's clear something up once and for all. Feminine embodiment, it is not a costume that you put on. It is not a facade. It is not you just like living in creative flow because that's what the Pinterest pin tells you to do. It's not about avoiding decisions or not having any assertiveness or any structure. That is not true feminine embodiment. That is like a fucking performance, is what it is. What I've realized over the years, and when I realized what true feminine embodiment is, and even true masculine embodiment, it is about alignment with your true essence and desires in a current season of life. Now, the current season of life, I like to add that little bit in because if you are going into the season of motherhood, for example, like I am, your expression of your feminine embodiment can look extremely different to the version of you that was really working on her career but wasn't any less feminine. So the version of me this time last year expressed her feminine energy different to now, let's say, or to when I'm, actually nursing our baby, for example. It's going to be a different expression of the feminine. So that's kind of the season of life bit that I like to add in. But at the end of the day, it's about being in alignment with our core essence as women. And for men, it's their core essence as men. And I say this because before I was coming on to record, I was making a cup of tea and I was thinking about like, okay, what actually comes up when I fucking like Pinterest, like look up on Pinterest, like feminine and masculine. And you have this like healthy feminine, unhealthy, or like toxic feminine, which I hate the word, or the word I really hate is toxic masculinity, or healthy masculine and toxic masculinity, or unhealthy masculinity. But what it does is it just pigeonholes. I think it creates fucking confusion. Honestly, I look at the list sometimes and I'm like, this is fucking confusing. Because are we now saying that the woman is in her like unhealthy masculine, or is it actually that she's just misaligned with herself, and it's not even like she's not even necessarily in an unhealthy masculine, because for a man that would be healthy. It's that for a woman it's like hyper masculinity, right? All these nuances. So why this episode is really important is because I think that when I first started this work a long time ago, people were life was different, honestly, which is crazy to think about 8 years ago, but the world was different. Like it was a really different place. And, kind of having these more like boxes almost, people got it a little bit more. I think we didn't actually read into it so much, but now the depth of craving for women to get out of their hypermasculinity and to be in their feminine, because of the wiring of them and the overthinking and the perfectionism and all of that, they then look at these lists and now they are overthinking and overanalyzing their behavior. Wait, am I in my unhealthy feminine? Am I in my unhealthy masculine? And I'm like, okay, we need to stop like trying to analyze all of our behaviors, because that just keeps us in our head. When we can actually drop into our body and hence live with alignment with ourselves and our life and all of that, we then stop trying to pigeonhole ourselves. So when I look at women that are trying to be in their feminine, I far too often am seeing them trying to tick off this arbitrary checklist of like feminine traits, quote unquote, of wear flowy clothes, don't say no, always lead with love. Like, what a wank. Never let I'm sorry, but it is. Never let anybody else make the plans. Like, always just let him make the lead. Follow your intuition 24/7. Be soft, be open, be nurturing all the time. And, maybe for some women that actually is really in alignment with their truth. Amazing. But what I'm coming on and to share with is for those of you, because there's a majority of you that listen to this, are high functioning, high achieving women. You are not the woman that should be told to just like be soft, open and nurturing at all times, because that is not you. Like, is that me? No, absolutely not. It is not you. So we need to think about how can we redefine like modern feminine energy? How can you even really look at like, what am I thinking is feminine energy versus what is actually true feminine embodiment? Because a woman can be checking off this arbitrary list of things that she, needs to be embodying to quote unquote be in her feminine, but still she can't surrender. She can't let go of control. She cannot relax in the presence of a powerful man. So then it begs the question of like, is this her actual truth? Or is it that she's now internalizing this belief of I'm more worthy as a woman, or he's going to lead more if I'm ticking off this list of things I need to do to quote unquote be in my feminine? Being in your feminine does not then mean like divorcing yourself from your true self. If you need to fucking say the thing, say the thing. Don't worry about, oh, what's feminine communication right now? Let's just say the fucking thing. You know what I mean? We can't forget the humanness in the embodiment of feminine and masculine embodiment. So if I was to sum up what true feminine embodiment feels like, it feels like home. It truly feels like in your body, it's like this exhale, almost like this energetic step back, and you just feel at home in your body. It is not about what you're doing. It is about how you feel when you're doing something. So you could be an accountant. Honestly, hat goes off to you because that ain't me. You could be an accountant and sitting there plugging numbers and doing all these things, these calculations in Excel spreadsheets every day. And Pinterest has made, by the way, I'm not trying to demonize Pinterest because I absolutely fucking love Pinterest. So no one get the idea of like Pinterest is now a bad thing. I'm on that thing every day. So no, it's about how you use it, right? Like everything, it's about how you use it. So you now you're thinking, oh my God, because I'm in an Excel spreadsheet and being logical all day, I'm not a feminine woman. Not true. That's not true, because if you are feeling lit up and like turned on, which is probably hard for a lot of us to imagine an accountant, not, no, no, it's not hard for us to imagine an accountant turned on by numbers, because I would hope that your accountant is turned on by that, but it's hard for us to feel turned on by doing an Excel spreadsheet. Anyway, we're going to talk about this like in this context of an Excel spreadsheet in the podcast that we're going to do about the book, because like as an example, like how did everything back end for the book? This is a total tangent side note. I'm coming back to the point in a second. And I often just think about how my book agent tried to walk me through this Excel, like really in-depth Excel spreadsheet, whatever. It's like about like numbers and what you have to get in order to like, get New York Times bestseller and blah, blah, blah. And every time I would look at it, I'd be like, okay. And it would just literally go in one ear and out the other. So like that's why with the whole New York Times bestseller thing, it was like, I could not have done this without Hal, because he understood that fucking Excel spreadsheet that I just could not. He loves a spreadsheet. I do not love a spreadsheet. Okay. Anyway, my point is that you could be an accountant, absolutely loving your job. And so you are feeling turned on and just like literally orgasmic towards these numbers. And like, you're just feeling so juicy as you're doing this. Okay. You're then in your feminine, one could argue. And I would argue that. And I say that as a woman that loves to work. I love to do things. I love to be productive. I love to just be like pumping out like creative things that I'm thinking about. Like when I get into a flow, I am in a flow, right? And I don't feel like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted after that. I was so in my head. I don't have a headache after it. Absolutely not. Because I was in my feminine whilst I was doing it. Okay. So like, remember, I am the breadwinner. I run a global company. I am right now, well, I guess by the time you're listening to this, I'll be 8 months pregnant. What the fuck? 8 months pregnant. And I, launched a book that became an instant New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller, and LA Times bestseller. Absolutely still don't know how that happened. I'm like, what even is life? Anyway, been working on that for 6 years. And I can, without a shadow of a doubt, say that I am in my feminine. So it's not about what you're doing to be in your feminine. It's about how you feel when you are doing it. So as I'm saying all of this, I hope it's connecting some dots of when I'm talking about then, we'll get into this in a second, your nervous system and how that influences your feminine energy. Or if I'm talking about trauma and how that influences your feminine energy. Because like I've said a bajillion times on this podcast, if you don't feel safe in your body, you cannot surrender. If you don't feel safe in your body, you cannot surrender. And that isn't just about safety from your external environment or the people around you, because you can only control that so much. It's about creating inherent safety. So when you are actually deeply embodied in your feminine, part of it is about you've cleared all of the trauma and all of the patterning and the programming that made your nervous system and your body feel unsafe to be in this energetic state, in this frequency, in this flow state, in your creativity, in surrender, in receptivity, also in assertiveness and drawing boundaries and speaking your truth and all of that. Because a powerful feminine woman, aka true feminine embodiment, she absolutely speaks her truth. She does possess assertiveness. She does put her foot down. She does have direction. She isn't just flowing around like an airy fairy. That's not necessarily what a powerful woman does. Of course, there are some powerful women, and that feels really in alignment to them. Okay, great. But I'm talking about for those of you that are like, how can I be so in my feminine, but still be having a career, or having a career and being a mother and doing this? Or I want to be in my feminine, but I don't want to be a pushover. That's not what, like, being in your feminine does not mean that you're a pushover. If anyone makes you think that, stop, like unfollow, delete, stop listening to them, because that is not what feminine energy is, or feminine embodiment is. If you have been listening to this podcast and feeling that pull in your gut, the one that whispers, it's time to do more, then this is your moment, because I am officially hosting my 8th 3-day immersion this November in Atlanta, and the waitlist is now open to make sure that you do not miss out on that early bird pricing when tickets are officially released. If you have been doing the mindset work, the journaling, the podcast, but your body still feels stuck, then this immersion is truly for you, because it is not just a vibe shift. It is a full nervous system shift. It is a complete body makeover. In just 3 days, we will be clearing the trauma that has been stuck in your body at the root. We turn your feminine magnetism all the way on, and you leave literally walking differently, talking differently, manifesting differently. Last year, we had 2 immersions. This year, we have 1. So the spaces are super limited. So if your body is feeling the pull, do not wait, because every time we have a full room and the tickets sell out. So make sure that you add your name to the waitlist now. That way you can be the first to access tickets when they do drop. You can just click the link in the description below, or you can DM me saying Immersion 25, spelled with an I, not an E, Immersion 25, and then you will get a link to join the waitlist. This is not just an event. This is the activation and the healing that your body has been craving. Now, let's get back to the episode. So let's talk about, I'm just going to run through, because I have a bajillion episodes on these things, ladies, but that way you can kind of go to the episodes that you need, because the podcast directory, if you haven't looked at it, it is fucking amazing. It is fully revamped. And the podcast directory, you can search for basically what topics you need, and then that podcast episode will come up. So you can basically jump to where you need to, versus trying to scroll through on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that shit is just not helpful. Okay. So let me run through some of the things that you need to potentially be working on, reflecting on, healing, embodying, in order for feminine embodiment for you to actually stick. First one, you will not be able to feel safe to be a feminine woman if you do not feel safe in the presence of the masculine. When I say in the presence of the masculine, I do not just mean in the presence of men. That is part of it. You need to feel safe in the presence of men. I also mean in the presence of structure and systems and discipline and direction and assertiveness and boundaries and all of the the more masculine energy that actually makes the feminine feel safe. The reason why I say this is because a lot of women that will come to me, the reason why they're actually afraid to go into their feminine and to be more soft and receptive is not even just because of their wounded relationship with men, but because of their wounded relationship with anything that is masculine energy. Because in the past, all of the masculine energy has caused them to burn out. It's caused them to disassociate. It's caused them to be miserable in their job life, all that kind of thing. And so that can create a complicated relationship with the feminine. And I say this also because when you join Queen Alchemy, for example, for those of you that haven't joined Queen Alchemy yet, I really hope that you do one day, because it's absolutely amazing. But even in Empoweredly Submissive, which is $149, so everybody can go join that. Even in Empoweredly Submissive, the only way that you can actually get into your feminine is to heal your relationship with the masculine. So whenever I'm working with someone, that's my first thing I'm working on with them. I'm not working on making them feel safe to be in their feminine, because that safety cannot stick without us firstly working on the masculine stuff first, and all that entails for that particular person, because obviously everybody has a different case. So for that particular person. So if you need to start healing your relationship with men, my book, hello, I can't think I can say that. My book right there. My book is a really, really, really great place to start, because a really big component that will help you to heal your relationship with men, not just the masculine, but with men, is actually understanding them. And that survey that I have included in the book, really has helped a lot of, I use that survey also in Be a Lover Not a Mother and my program. And that survey, so many women comment on when I read out the answers in the calls, the Be a Lover Not a Mother calls. It is tear jerking for them. And it's so healing to hear these things that men are saying completely anonymously. So they're going to obviously be truthful, completely anonymously. So Healing your relationship with men, number one, for feeling safe to be in your feminine. Two, detaching from the programming of society that basically makes us think there's only one version of what it looks like to be a worthy and a successful woman. Again, read my book. You need to unplug from that because you need to give yourself permission that in each different season of your life, we are women, we are multidimensional beings, we are cyclical beings. You know, we all are going through different, you can go through 500 seasons in a, maybe not 500 in a year, but you can go through a lot of seasons even in a year because it's just your cycle. Can you give yourself permission to honor all versions of you rather than thinking one version of you is better than another version of you? What truths or beliefs have you internalized that you don't actually want to believe about being a woman? What are they? You need to start detaching from that programming because it is absolutely inhibiting your ability for your nervous system to feel fully safe in you locking into true feminine embodiment. Okay. Also healing anything around it feels quote unquote safer to be in your masculine. That is just a form of self-protection. It is not necessarily safer to be in your masculine. A lot of us can internalize that because in the past, we have felt like our softness or our femininity or just our female body has gotten us into really bad circumstances. This will often be coupled with a fear of being seen. And it can be coupled with, which is along the same lines of fear of being seen, fear of beauty. So we basically don't allow ourselves to be beautiful, to radiate, to be magnetic. This can show up as skin issues, for example, because it's like, oh, if you have a face of acne or if you have really bad eczema, it makes you feel, right? This doesn't actually make you uglier, but if you internalize it as it makes me uglier and therefore I'm safer. That's a really big one for a lot of women where they actually feel unsafe in their beauty. So they hide their beauty. And you remember your beauty isn't just physical, it's also energetic. So you can be hiding that magnetism and like your aura and internalizing, I'm only safe if I have this hyper masculine armor around me. So you then, for that, you're working on healing the root of what has caused you to put that armor around you. It could be sexual trauma, it could be programming, it could be something that your dad said to you or your mom said to you when you were younger, or maybe they said to you a lot of times. It could be something from when you were a teenager. You know what it also could have been something from, which often gets forgotten, is the impact of micro trauma where it turns into macro trauma. So you might have heard me talk about micro trauma before. And let me give an example. So micro trauma is something where a lot of people will not think that, like, they won't associate that with trauma because it's such a little thing. And it's a bad thing that we do. I talk about this in the book because we really gaslight ourselves. That we don't allow ourselves to get the healing that we absolutely deserve to then live the life that we also deserve. So I'll use an example of perfectionism. So perfectionism has come from a moment of like quote unquote smaller trauma compared to what others would define as big trauma, but it's actually not necessarily smaller trauma because that moment of perfectionism from when you were, let's say, 5 years old, where you felt like, okay, the only way to get love is to get straight A's. Maybe not when you're 5, but whatever, roll with me. The only way to be loved is to basically be perfect. You then continue to live that out for your whole entire life. So now you're 25 and the perfectionism has caused you to basically feel like, oh, I have to just be perfect in any relationship that I'm in. So as you're dating, you are not being your full truest self because you think that he wants this perfect cool girl woman. So you're silencing your truth. You're not saying the thing that you want to say. You're having sex when you don't want to have sex, right? Now, what could happen, and this is an example of how it leads on to macro trauma, is now, let's just say you are in a relationship where you are getting sexually assaulted. Now you have macro trauma. But everybody thinks about childhood trauma. Everybody focuses on the childhood. Well, maybe you didn't have any sexual trauma in your childhood, but that instance when you were 25, that wasn't the first moment of the root of that trauma. The first moment was when you were 5, when your mom or your dad made you feel like, in order to be loved, I have to be perfect and to please them. Can you see how that's translated because it's unhealed and you've continued to live it out and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in your body, and it will show up it'll basically morph into a multitude of different ways of how it will show up. And then you've actually gotten into a more traumatic situation for the average person because of something that started when you were 5 that was quote unquote small. So when we think about trauma, when you think about your trauma, I don't want you to think about in terms of just these big things. You can have grown up in a quote unquote perfect childhood and still experience trauma. You can be in a great place in your life right now, but want more for yourself. You do not need to be at the depths of despair, hitting rock bottom in order to be emailing me or DMing me or joining a program or coming to the immersion. This is like this space that I hold for all of you is not just for those of you that are in the depths of your shit. It's also for those of you that your life's fine, everything's good, but you want more. Allow yourself to deserve to validate that you're allowed to have more, that you're allowed to heal even some of those smaller things. Because a lot of women will say to me like, oh, I don't have like that much trauma, blah, blah, blah. Once we get into it, I'm like, you have a lot of trauma. Like, I'm not telling them this. I'm just thinking in my head, like, you have a lot of trauma. It's just that you have not allowed yourself to validate these struggles as something that you should work on. You've probably, most of the time, what happens is you internalize it as it's just my personality, when it's not necessarily just your personality. Once you've healed your stuff, then you can actually be like, okay, what was my personality versus what was the trauma response? So for me, for example, it is in my personality to be a go-getter and to like, you know, have big goals for myself and be achieving what I want. Like that is very much in my personality. But what's not in my personality is how I used to work. So I used to say like, oh, it's just my personality. It's just the way that I'm wired, blah, blah, blah. Basically just, I would be burning myself out essentially. And it was coming from this place of what I didn't know at the time, but what it actually was is I feel more worthy and more lovable when I am achieving. Now I don't have that. I just have like 500 creative ideas in my head at all times and need to do something with them. But you can make those differentiations once you aren't being blocked by your trauma. So other things to work on, mother and father wound. Obviously, I've got a whole episode on mummy wounds, whole episode on daddy wounds that you guys can listen to. The feminine cannot fully open, and the openness is the receptivity, the magnetism, the surrender. And why we want to open, ladies, and we actually talked about this yesterday in the Muse Masterclass as well. If you haven't signed up for that, with the link below, that is only going to be up for a very limited amount of time, so make sure you sign up for that. When you are open, when the feminine is open, once your body actually feels safe to open, that is when you are able to magnetize your dream life in. That's when you don't have to do a bunch of things to manifest. You don't have to be journaling every day, doing 300 mantras, like chanting under the trees. You don't have to be doing any of that because our natural state as the feminine is receptivity. We make manifestation harder for ourselves, and it's something I call embodied manifestation. But we make manifestation harder for ourselves when we are doing it all in our head, and our body does not feel safe to actually receive what it is that we want. Once our body feels safe to open and receive that, you don't even have to be doing that much, and your words just become your spells. That's one of the things that we went through in Muse, and I kind of gave you guys the nitty-gritty, so you can go and check that out. But the feminine cannot fully open when we are holding on to unprocessed grief or resentment or unmet needs from childhood, or feeling like, you know, oh, I can only be loved if I'm perfect, that kind of stuff. Think about this. Was your mum chronically self-abandoning or overgiving? Was your mum chronically self-abandoning or overgiving? That's probably a mother wound that you need to work on, that she's passed down to you, that you've internalized. Was your dad emotionally unavailable or unpredictable? Again, how has that then affected your relationship with the masculine and therefore with the feminine. Now, obviously, those can get flipped. It's not like, oh, mum's the only one that can be overgiving. Dad could obviously have that too. I'm just using generalizations from what I've seen from clients. So, when we have these patterns and these blueprints that have been given to us by our parents or our guardians or social conditioning or school or friendship groups or whatever it is, these patterns embed themselves, ladies and gentlemen, into our nervous system. And once they've embedded themselves into our nervous system, that then dictates what we think and what we feel feels safe in our adulthood, and also obviously in our teenage years too. But most of us are adults listening to this. That dictates what feels safe in our adulthood. So we're going to talk about this next week, but with money trauma, I've had a lot of episodes on money, so you guys can go listen to all of those as well. But let's talk about money trauma for a second. People will ask me like, okay, what is the trauma around not feeling safe to hold money? AKA, I'm shopping all the time and like I never have money in my bank account. I'm going to go through this more next week, but as an example, if your nervous system was wired to feel like money causes fights, let's just say, this is a super basic one. I'll go into depth next week. Money causes fights. Why would you feel safe then having a lot of money? Because money equals fights to your nervous system. So every time you get money in, what are you going to do? You're going to spend it. You're going to get rid of it. And this is unconscious in the sense of it has been programmed into your nervous system. So this is the way that you live until you do the deep, deep, deep somatic work and nervous system reprogramming. And then you'll experience what you've probably seen other clients write to me on, and I've shared on my Instagram stories and all that kind of stuff. You'll then experience that feeling of like, oh my God, I feel that thing now, Monica, where I'm not having to think about changing my behavior. I'm no longer drawn to that instance, or I'm no longer triggered by this thing. And very often how that will show up for my clients is they realize it after the fact. So like, let's just like 20 minutes after the situation occurred that usually triggers them, they're like, wait, oh my God, that didn't trigger me. I had one of my clients the other day message me saying that she realized that she, usually when she goes to get her hair done, she'll like have lunch at this place afterwards or whatever, but she'll spend like 15 minutes going back and forth in her head with this like anxiety spiral of, do I have lunch there? Do I not? Do I have like, what are people going to think of me? I'm sitting alone, like going through this whole fucking thing in her head. And she messaged me being like, yesterday I didn't even realize this until after the fact, hence what I just said. But I went to the hairdresser and I thought, oh, I'm just going to get some lunch. And I popped into the cafe, sat there by myself, had lunch. And I didn't realize until later, oh my God, I just went to the cafe, sat there and had lunch by myself. And there wasn't this whole thought process about it. That is the magic. I hope you can kind of like, I hope that example helps you to like feel it a little bit, because it's hard to explain sometimes. But it's like, that is the magic of this work that I do, that you don't have to sit there in your car and do 10 deep breathing exercises and tap your eyebrows and then be like, okay, it's safe for me to go into the cafe. You don't even think about the fucking cafe anymore. You just go into the cafe because of what we are doing on such a deep, deep level. And it works quickly, obviously to an extent, versus you having to use a deep breathing technique for the next 10 years of your life. When I say it works quickly when you do the healing and then do the integration. A lot of people stop at the healing. Do not do that. I posted something on my Instagram stories actually the other week. It's going to be in a highlight. It'll be in the Queen Alchemy 8 highlight on my Instagram stories if you want to see it. But this woman in Queen Alchemy was sharing with me, I put this like voice message in the group about navigating the quote unquote gap, which is like basically the gap between your past self and your future self. And she replied being like, oh my God, like, can you be in the gap for like 3 years? She shared how she'd been working with like a not so expert coach. And it basically has just put her in this gap feeling ever since working with her. I sent her the response. I put the transcript in there in the Instagram story so everyone could see my suggestion. And she was just like, oh my God, I feel so validated, blah, blah, blah. She was basically just told when doing, healing work to just relax. And there was no integration, obviously, because this chick didn't know what she was doing. No integration. You do not want to just do healing and leave yourself high and dry, because then that's where you miss the embodiment aspect. Hence, when I say feminine embodiment, we're not just stopping at the healing around the feminine and your relationship with being a woman and the feminine and the masculine. You're then also going into the embodiment of the feminine so that it sticks. So that 10 years later, you're feeling more and more and more in your body and in yourself. You don't feel like you have to do a bajillion things each day to be in your feminine. If you are craving more softness, magnetism, and ease in your life, but your body still feels like it is stuck in control, tension, or emotional burnout, you need to be inside Muse. It is a new masterclass that we are doing that I am so excited for. And this is not just another mindset training. Muse is a full body activation that shows you how to unlock your feminine energy, heal trauma at the root, and shift your nervous system into full receivership. So inside this masterclass, I'm going to be breaking down why trauma is the number one thing blocking your magnetism and how to finally clear it, the 4 flavors of the feminine and how to embody your unique essence, how to rewire your nervous system so that receiving love, money, and success feels safe, the polarity shifts that make your man step up, lead, and cherish you, how feminine surrender makes you more powerful, not less powerful, and why your manifestations aren't landing. And a little hint, it is not about your vision board, it is in your body. So Muse is where you are going to be able to stop chasing, forcing, and proving, and really start becoming the woman that attracts everything with ease. It is free. It is going to be potent as fuck, and it is happening live. So make sure that you are registered. You can save your seat by registering with the link below. And trust me when I say this is the shift your feminine energy has been waiting for. So I will see you there. Okay, other thing that you have to work on, I've done a whole episode on this, nervous system regulation around receiving. Do you feel safe to receive? We kind of touched on this in the very beginning, because we all want our man to lead. That's why we're all here, right? We want our man to lead, but letting him lead is not just a mindset thing. It's not just you telling yourself something. It is a visceral experience as well. Do you feel safe in receiving his leadership? If you flinch at compliments, if you tighten up when somebody offers to help, if you get triggered when he actually leads you and you want to step into control, that is a nervous system dysregulation around receiving. You go into the trauma response of control because your body or nervous system only feels safe when you are in control. So control then gives you the illusion of safety, but control and feminine embodiment don't go hand in hand, because the feminine knows that she is the most magnetic when she releases her grip of control. That does not mean you have to release the grip of control to a man that does not deserve your receivership, right? That's not what I'm saying. You have to use your discernment. Obviously, we are letting healthy men lead. We are letting men lead that we feel safe around or whatever. And if your lack of safety is your own issue, it's not him, like it's an inherent issue, that's something that you have to work on. But it's not even just about releasing control to him, it's about releasing control to other instances, releasing control with our manifestations, releasing control with the outcome of a job that we want, releasing control. Like there's so many ways that we are holding on so tightly as women these days, and that is blocking us from feeling like we can just do nothing and be in our feminine. It's like the typical situation is the woman that is gripping onto control is the same woman that it thinks that checking off a list of arbitrary things to do is how to be in your feminine, when that is absolutely not how to be in your feminine. And like, of course, the woman that's gripping onto control wants a list of things of how to be in her feminine. Like when you think about it, it really makes sense. So like potential trigger warning with that, but like it really does make sense. So this, for those of you that really need a starting point, join Empoweredly Submissive. It's $149. That is going to help your body to start to feel safe receiving instead of controlling. Obviously, the immersion is where we are going into like massive, massive, massive depth around all of this and doing the actual like really deep somatic work and healing. And I'm so excited to be doing another event because they just, oh my God, they light me up. But for those of you that are new to this, start with empoweredly submissive to just get like a taste of everything. And more importantly, to also get a taste with me, especially if you're thinking about potentially doing the immersion, but you've done no work with me before. So I've kind of talked about control. That is a big wound that you obviously have to heal, is the control issue. Because control so often is rooted in, it's like control is like compensation for a lack of trust in others and ourselves. Where are you not trusting yourself? Where do you feel inherently unsafe within yourself? Because like I said, trust is not just about men. It's also about trusting our own discernment, trusting our intuition, trusting our bodies, being able to actually trust that we are safe in the letting go. And a way that we also can control as women is we are trying to control our self-expression. We're gripping on to, oh, I have to be expressing myself in this certain way, because we gaslight ourselves into thinking, am I being too much if I express myself this way? Am I wrong to want that? Am I wrong to say that? Is this selfish for me to be doing? Is this selfish for me to desire? So how are you controlling your own self-expression as well? Versus allowing your self-expression and like trusting yourself that expressing yourself is safe, and that your self-expression is not, of course, coming from this like unhealthy projecting way. That's obviously not what we want here. But your self-expression isn't too much. Like, think about how you are controlling yourself, not just how you're controlling other people and gripping onto control in regards to your manifestations and money and other things, but how are you controlling yourself? The last thing that I want to say, ladies, which is like the juiciest thing maybe that I'll say for some of you for this whole entire episode. I said this in a recent episode, and there was a few of you that DM'd me that were like, holy shit, you triggered the fuck out of me, because what you were saying was so true, and that has never clicked for me before. So hear me out, and I'm going to dive into it for 5 minutes before we all jump off. How many of you only give yourself permission to rest once you're sick? How many of you only let yourself slow down once you literally cannot go at the pace that you were going at because your body has gotten sick, for example? My ears are ringing, so there's definitely there's probably a lot of you listening being like, oh my God. It just started ringing my right ear. So what I want to say to this is that so many of us drown ourselves with endless to-dos. We, have this like mentality that the more that we do, the more worthy that we are, because unconsciously we are trying to compete with men. We are not men. Like, I'm going to make that very fucking clear. I think everybody knows that now from listening to me, but if you're new here, we are not men. And that is powerful, except when you're trying to be like a man, because what you're doing is you are diminishing your power, you are diminishing your productivity, and you are diminishing your magnetism as a woman. The answer is not. I am not one of those people where I'm just like, oh, I just like lay around all day and do nothing. And I will say, some people internalize this like, be in your feminine, you don't need to be hyper productive, you don't need to be like a man. They internalize it to the point where they basically just become lazy, and they give themselves constant permission to do nothing. And hey, if you don't want to do anything, that's completely fine. But also, if you want like a thriving career and you want to like climb the corporate ladder, or you want to like whatever, you also need to apply yourself, right? This isn't about, oh, you need to then burn yourself out, but you need to apply yourself and show up. Just like with manifestation, it is not just the law of attraction, it's also the law of action. So if you are not doing anything towards your manifestations, you are not taking action, do not expect them to come to you. Like, I couldn't expect to be manifesting a New York Times bestseller if I didn't write a fucking book, right? You need to have action. And then obviously doing the things behind the release of the book. There is action that needs to come with this as well. So no one get that. I don't want anyone to get that confused. But my point is that so many of us as women, we do not allow ourselves to just give ourselves permission to rest without there being a reason for rest. We don't allow ourselves to just go hang out in the garden for, you guys, I love my fucking garden. Go hang out in the garden 15 minutes and have a break in the middle of the day. How many of us just like sit and scoff our lunch down in front of the computer instead of taking 15 minutes to just eating with peace? How many of us feel guilty or unproductive or just like weird in our body, like it feels uncomfortable to take a nap or to sit and watch a movie in the middle of the day? Like it feels so naughty to sit and watch a movie in the middle of the day. That is us and our body feeling like we are doing something wrong when we are not in hyperachieve mode. And so many of you resonated when I said on this episode that so many women do not give themselves permission to rest until their body is forcing them to rest. Think about how much better your health would be. And I know so many of us, we want to like look our best, we want to feel our best, we want to be magnetic. What if you allocated just a little bit of rest every day? Because what I've learned about rest is that you in that rest, it's like a quantum leap with time. So this has been a big thing that I've really embodied to another level during pregnancy. I came up with this like nugget before pregnancy, but it's like I've really been embodying this during pregnancy. And it's this idea that you can quantum leap time, because just think about if you're having a really unproductive day because you're sleep deprived, but you tell yourself, I don't have time for a 20-minute nap. Okay, you don't get anything done the rest of the day. We're just going to say it like it is. Like you are unproductive, you cannot focus, you have a really shitty day because you're so sleep deprived. Well, what if you went and had a 20-minute power nap and that then revitalized you, and now the next hour you get done what pre-nap you would have gotten done in 5 hours. You've quantum leaped time because of a moment of rest. I think about how so many of us listening, we are wanting to channel creative ideas for our business. We are wanting to manifest, like whatever it is. We basically are needing some sort of intuitive download with something in our life. You will not have that. You will not have creativity pulsing through your body, life force energy pulsing through your body, the intuitive download, if there's no fucking space for it. So if your day is back to back to back to back to back, there's no space for the new ideas to flow in. There's no space for the intuitive hit to come in of like that you need to go and do this thing, or you thought this thing, or you are going to say hi to this person for some reason because you're working towards this manifestation. There's no space for those things to land because there's no space in your day. I'm not saying you have to block out 2 hours of white space to just do nothing, because I absolutely do not do that. But we all could put 5 minutes in our day of going outside and just watering the garden, or leaving our phone inside and just literally sitting on the grass out the front of our house for 5 minutes. And when I tell you this is going to buy you time, I absolutely mean it. It is going to buy you time. It is going to buy you health. It is going to buy you restorativeness. It is going to help your adrenals. It is going to help every single thing that we need as a feminine woman to continue to succeed with whatever success looks like for you in this season of life, to continue to succeed in this modern world. So, if you took one thing away from this episode, stop waiting until you get fucking sick to let yourself rest.